What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are going to be doing a playoff ranking, kind of a power ranking of all the teams that are in the playoffs. I left out the teams that have nothing to do with this. This is all about going into the play-ins, how I see the teams, where I see them, and we're not going to get into if I think they're going to win, lose, whatever. It's because that's all going to be dependent upon what team picks what. There's a lot more moving parts, I should say, going into the playoffs and the play-ins and all that. But this is how I see the teams, where I'm going to rank them, and we're going to talk about just what we think they can do. If they can go, into the playoffs, maybe surprise somebody, that kind of stuff. All right. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. All of you guys that have been supporting me, thank you very, very much. Greatly appreciated. And if you're new, just stopping by, checking me out. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week. Some weeks a little bit more, depending on what's going on. Sometimes, when we get to the off season, we'll discuss what's going to happen, depending on updates and all that. Obviously, when we hit the initial off season with the roster moves and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on, so I tend to update a little bit more. That's down the road a little bit. And guys, it's finally here. We got the playoffs coming up. The finality of the 2021 Overwatch League season is upon us. And I'm chomping at the bit to get to these matches and see what these teams can do. It's been a great season so far. And let's talk about the playoff race and the playoff teams that are in it. So, of course, we have some teams that already have booked their trip to the actual playoffs, which are going to be the Dallas Fuel, the LA Gladiators, and the Atlanta Reign in North America, and the Shanghai Dragons, and of course the Chengdu Hunters in the Eastern region. This is how I broke it down. I broke it down 1 to 14, since we do have play-ins where they're not going to be playing each other necessarily, and we're not having interconference play, whatever you want to call it. Basically, in the way I think the teams could possibly finish, get to the playoffs, make some noise, do some damage, and or win the championship. All right, guys, here we go. There is my rankings, 1 to 14. And we're going to start at the bottom. I'm going to give just a little bit about each team, what I feel they could possibly do. And we're not going to get into the regular season necessarily and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk a little bit about each team. You know how the drill goes with these things. All right, so coming in at 14, I have the Boston Uprising. All right, they slid in to the NA playoffs because the Mayhem were hot garbage and a hot mess for so long. Boston had a better season than they've had since season 1, I guess. So it's a big step for them to be in this play-in thing anyway. So if you're a Boston fan, I wouldn't be too upset about it. I just don't think they have enough to get to where they need to go. Moving forward into the actual playoffs, out of the play-ins, I don't think they're going to get beyond that. They have some great players. Myeongbong's really good. I love Myeongbong, and I like their DPS line of Valentine and IM37. They're really good. I just think there's a little bit they could work on here and there. Punk's been playing well too, but for now, they're my last seed in all of the playoffs at number 14. Moving up 1 to number 13. All right, Justice fans, you're going to get all pissed off, but I understand. But here's my thoughts on this. Look, I'm done with this team with the what if. It's not a fucking Marvel comic, all right? I'm done with the what if Decay and Mag and all of these guys played like they should. They don't. They won't, and they're at 13. I'm sorry. I said it at the beginning of the season. I don't see what's going to happen with this team. Their support line is not the biggest problem right now. It's the whole team itself. They have no cohesion. They have no direction. I don't know what's going on with the coaching, but they are lost in the sauce when they get into a stage. they have had 3 stages that were absolutely awful, in my opinion. One stage that was decent. This team should not be in the play-ins or this close. They should be up where the Shock and some of those other teams are that barely missed getting into the playoffs. They shouldn't be, and you could give me number rankings and all that shit. They beat the Mayhem, who suck, and they lost to them in a playoff scenario when they were still semi-decent. They beat teams like the Spitfire, Vancouver. They rise up occasionally, but you know what? Occasionally is not going to do it now. If you don't rise up now, you're done. And they haven't really proved anything to me all year, other than the fact that Decay is a monster. That's the only thing I know about this team that's any good. Mag, disappointing. Fury, I don't know what's happened to Fury in the last 2 years, but he's been meh. Their support line is better than I expected, but not great. And Assassin is okay. Basically, they're riding on Decay to carry them, much like they did last year when they got into the playoffs and they had the magic happen where they could play Decay on Zarya and he just ripped everybody. So, that's what I thought on the Justice. Little rant there, but I just don't see them going anywhere. They're not going to beat anyone. They might get past a Paris or somebody like that, but I don't even see that right now. I have Paris 2 spots ahead of them. So, next up, Hangzhou Spark. See the Washington Justice rant, and here we are with the Spark. They have a really good team on paper, but they just don't prove anything. They don't do anything. They snuck in because the freaking NYXL lost to Guangzhou at one point in the season, and this is where we're at. New York should be here. They're not. They failed. And, the Spark had one good stage. I believe they got more than half of their wins on the stage. They went 4-0. And they still failed, and they lost to New York at home, at a homestand, to go to a tournament. Other than Shy, and they also have lost MCD because he's an idiot and just spouts racist stuff apparently on his stream about Chinese players. And so you have that. All right, maybe they get Coldest in there, and he could play well, but I don't know what Coldest has. I haven't seen him play really that much, and he was a hot commodity coming in, and they really haven't done anything with him. So, maybe if Coldest steps up, if Gushue and Shy and Architect can play well, they have a chance to do something, but much like the Justice, I don't see it. They are what they are. Right now, they're fodder. But it's Apex, so, if the Dynasty take a day off, you never know. Or, Philadelphia has a weird game. I don't see that happening, though. So, here we are with them. All right, next up, a team with some positive spin. Paris. I did not expect them to be in the play-in chatter, talk, anything like that. They proved a lot to me. The mid-season pickups, I say this all the time, Vestola and Dredro have made a big difference on this team, and I think that they're a team that's on the rise. They're doing better than we expected them to do throughout the season, and next year looks promising. I don't know what they're going to do in this. If the meta shifts a certain way and things flow the right way for them, I think they could possibly win a game. I don't know if they're going to go past that, but there's also the underlying specter of something I didn't touch on in the last video, talking about the playoffs, is that they're not going to be able to go to the playoffs. If they happen, they're not going to be able to get to Hawaii. So that's also an oversight thing. Am I expecting them to go there? No, but, off chance that they have a meta that works for them, they're going to have to try and field a team or something weird like that. But all that stuff aside, I think they've made some progress. They have impressed me somewhat this year, and they are solidly at 11. They could possibly do something. I'm not expecting anything, to be honest with that. Next up, Toronto Defiant. Somewhat disappointing this year, somewhat surprising later on in the season. Now, they've had an easy schedule. So has Paris. Paris got 4 of their wins, or more than 4 of their wins, over the Vancouvers and the Spitfires of the world. So, Defiant, same thing. But they have some promise, and if they worked on some stuff, they have a good roster to begin with. If they get some things together, they could do a little bit in this. But I just don't see them. We're getting towards the end here, guys. Toronto doesn't have what it takes, in my estimation, to make it past the Outlaws, the Gladiators, the Fuel, the Shock. Even if the Justice nut up for once, I don't think they could beat them. But I do think they're better than some of the teams that are on this list by the way they were playing. They gave Atlanta a big run for their money, and that impressed me a lot. You know, Sato, Michelle, good tank line. You got decent supports. You got Aspire playing really well, and Hisu. If you get into some kind of Tracer Sombra vibe going on, you might see some noise out of the Defiant. I'm not leaving out the possibility of them doing a little bit, but getting into that grand final scenario, I don't see it. So I have them solidly at 10. Next up on the list, I have the Houston Outlaws cracking the top 10 here at 9. All right, Houston had a great start to the season. They looked really, really solid, looked good. They were playing really well. Cohesion was there. All of the things were going on. There were little hiccups here and there, but second half of the season has not been as good. Most of their losses have occurred in the second half, and that's not a good sign, for finishing a season. They're not hot at the right time. They might have been. Their schedule is a lot easier in the first half than it is in the second half, and they did what they had to do. They beat the teams they should beat, and all the scenarios and the tropes and all the cliches that you need to say. But if they don't get in the right metas with certain players, like I feel like Piggy is much better. He's good, but if you get Sigma involved, which is going to happen in the playoffs because we have an open scenario here, he's better. Dante has been hit or miss a little bit in the second half of the season. Hopefully he gets it together and things, flesh out a little bit more for him. Same thing with Happy. Their DPS line has been inconsistent, to say the least. Their support line is pretty solid. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It's good enough. They maintain. They do their job, and they get things done. Jake playing Brig a lot and jumping in here and there, playing Mercy and stuff like that is fine. And, you have Juby doing a lot of the Lucio stuff and all that. I'm okay with that. That works for them, and I'll give it to them on that. My biggest fear with them is that they have issues when things don't go to plan. They don't have a plan B. I've said this a million times. I feel like they have a solid, well thought out plan going into a match, and then when things start getting countered and they start getting pounded, they don't switch fast enough. It's we got to stick to the plan, it feels like, and then all of a sudden it's too late when they start switching. So they have to be a little bit more adaptable, a little bit more on the fly, figure out what's going on faster, play a little faster paced as far as their mental goes and their game sense. When you're starting to get counter and stuff like that, don't worry about the plan. You need to come up with plan B and start focusing on that and doing what you need to do to finish the match. Because there's a lot of times when they don't do that, and this is their big downfall in certain scenarios, and especially in these pressure situations. They have a solid plan. Sometimes it fails, and a good portion of the time they don't adapt quick enough. And they got to get their adaptability down. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Fusion. I have them at 8, but in their region, they're a little closer. I think they're getting to where they should have been in the middle. They had a bad time of it. They haven't had all their players, all of the things that we all know about the Philadelphia, but these guys are getting together. They're playing really well. You have Alarm, Funny Astro in the back line. They got their synergy back. They're playing good. The last stage, they played fantastic. Seoul was just better in that one game. And you can't say, Philadelphia didn't necessarily throw it away, but they got outplayed. I think the more these guys play together, the better they're going to be. I think there's some holes. I would like to see what would happen if Poco was playing with Mono instead of Hotba. It's okay. It works. They've been doing certain things that kind of work for them, comfort picks and whatnot. Like they've been doing a lot of Zarya. Hotba's not bad, but he's not the best solution to this problem either. Their DPS rotation is good. I think they're getting a good flow with that. And I think in the playoffs they could make some noise. I think they're a lot better off than people would suspect just by going on the record. They have Hangzhou first. I think that's a win for them. I'm not, like I said, I didn't really want to get into the prediction thing, but that's a good spot for them. It's a pressure situation. They can do something here and then move on and see what they can do potentially against Seoul again. And as long as New York's not in there, I think they're kind of okay. Although they exercised that demon in the Countdown Cup. So they got that out of the way, but they still didn't finish the job. I think they're still a viable team and a team that can make a lot of noise and can do some things if they get their flow going. And we see what we have wanted to see out of the Fusion since the beginning of the year, but visa restrictions and all that stuff have kind of screwed them. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. All right, next up, 7, Seoul Dynasty. We talked a lot about Seoul on here. Profit and Fitz are their mainstays. They are the guys that make this team tick. If you get Gesture in a good spot and a good hero pool, and he's focused and ready to go on Orisa or Ball or whatever they're going to do with that, they're going to be dangerous. I have them at 7 because I think there's obviously there's 6 more teams that I think that are better than them right now that do better in pressure situations to an extent. I would say that them and the Shock are kind of twins in this. They're kind of 6-7, but could be 6, both of them together. They rely on certain things and certain things to happen, but they're just not to the point where they can finish the job. They're just certain points where Seoul just does not look like a championship caliber team. They're good enough to get in the playoffs. They're good enough to get to that situation where they have a couple of games, a couple of wins where they could get to the grand finals again. But there are just things that hold them back. Their support line is one of them. When their support line is focused and on, as we saw in the Countdown Cup preliminaries, they are a hard team to beat. But as we saw in the finals, when Animo and Creative less, Creative had a couple of good moments in a couple of the matches, but they need more consistency out of both of those guys to be somewhat relevant and viable. 2U's done a decent enough job, but like I keep saying with this team, the support line has to step up. The DPS line is always there with Fitz and Profit. Support line steps up, you might see some more out of them. Next up, the Shock. Mediocre year for the Shock, but I think they're slowly getting things in sync, getting together. They lost a lot of big components, including coaches and whatever. Losing Striker was huge, and I said it was going to be. But they're starting to come around. I think that they can do a lot in the playoffs. I think they can surprise a couple of teams here and there. I think they have the potential to get out of this play-in thing for sure. I think they're one of the teams that I'm looking at to get out of that and into the playoffs solidly. Just because you can't look at this team and tell me that they're not worthy of doing that. Not that the rest of the year they have played down a little bit. But teams have also punched up. A lot of teams have gotten better. And they're still on a really, really high octane, high skill level of a team. It's just everybody else is getting better. I think this is their time. And if this is any time, they didn't make a tournament. I'm sure that's sitting badly with them. They're competitors, and I think this is going to be where you see the Shock move up. Next up, all right, I have the Atlanta Reign at 5. And the only reason why I have them at 5 and instead of ahead of Chengdu is because the Pelican situation to me is up in the air. And after watching that Countdown Cup, he means a lot to this team, more than you would think. And if he's playing on a different ping and gets in a situation where his ping is too high and he can't play, that's unfortunate, but it's terrible because they're doing the Hawaii thing. And all around, I think they're playing really well. I think Unter has coached them up. I think they're ready for any kind of meta. I think they are also very good at what they do, and they can dictate stuff. With Gator and Hawk And that support line with Iris and Massa, they're playing very, very good. If Pelican is there, I think they're a viable option for the championship. By there, I mean on the same paying and all of the stuff. There's no weird shit going on with how he has to do his setup and all that kind of stuff. It seems unlikely right now that he's not going to be not in that situation, but if he's not, I still think they're very, very good. I think Edison's fantastic. I think he can fill roles that they need him to fill in, but he's not on the level of Pelican. He was my Rookie of the Year choice. You can't say that this team who's been riding on Pelican and not riding, he's been playing along with them and playing at a high level and is an important piece of this puzzle that the Reign had at the beginning of the year with how to get better, where are we going to go? He made it happen. And if he can't be playing in the same room as them and all that stuff, that's going to be hard for them to have to get around. That's the only reason why I have them at 5. I would have them a lot higher. Well, I would have them 1 higher. I'd have them at 4 ahead of Chengdu. Because I think with Pelican, they could beat Chengdu. I just, on normal paying, like if he was in the building with them, I think it would have been a different story. Number 3 team, call it recency bias, call it whatever you want to call it. I have the Glads. Los Angeles Gladiators at number 3. Look, the Countdown Cup, I had them because my perception of them going in was a lot of people are just going on past performance, past bullshit, all that. They took the Reign to 5-1 and lost to get into the Countdown Cup. They had battles with other teams that were really good. They lost to the Fuel, things like that. It's not like they're losing to bad teams. They finally came around. They went to 7 with Chengdu. They got through adversity to get there, and then they got through adversity to win the Countdown Cup. Yeah, it sounds like I'm just going on a total recency thing, but if you watch their matches all the way through the year, Space has upped his game since the first stage. Shu is unbelievable. Skewed is an important part. Birdring does a ton of stuff for them. He's playing a decent enough Sombra. The other heroes he plays, when he plays them, like if he gets on Hanzo or he gets on some of the other stuff that he plays, he is at a level that we haven't seen since Season 1 with Birdring. So I just love what this team is doing. They have confidence. They are playing really, really well. Space also has provided more than just play. He's provided leadership. Going into this scenario, I have them at 3 because I think there's a possibility, guys, that they could do something big. It's been Dallas and Shanghai all year. You never know what can happen. The Gladiators are one of the teams I think that can come up. And I totally forgot to talk about Chengdu at 4. Okay. I got so excited about talking about the Gladiators, they were going to talk about Chengdu. All right, so let's dip down to 4. Chengdu, same thing as the Gladiators. I think they proved a lot throughout the whole year. Rui has coached them up. You have Leave, my MVP vote. You have Gaga and Late Young playing fantastic at tank. I just love where this team is at. They're another team that if the thing is with them, certain things have to fall right. They've had a good run here where ball is kind of meta, and they get to play that, and they get to play their style and all that stuff. And you can get Jinmu on what he's comfortable on, and Lee just goes and fucking wrecks everybody. And your support line is better than advertised with Monk and Yevatol, or even Far Away if you throw him in there, and Misha when they do that. I really like what they can do. There are some things, if it gets into like a Rhine meta or something like that, they're in big trouble. I think they can do anything with like Gaga on ball, maybe Monkey and Orisa. But if we get into some kind of Rhine scenario where they got to play Rush, they're not going to play it, first of all. Let's get that out of the way. They're not going to play Rush. If they're going up against teams that are playing that, they're going to have a lot of trouble. But I still think they're solidly at 4. I'm sorry I got the damn order mixed up. But, yeah, the Hunters are looking good. They had a great Countdown Cup. They took the Glads to 7. And, there's a lot to look forward to in the playoffs with this team. They're fun to watch. All of the things that you want to say. They've got the Chengdu zone, but they've taken the Chengdu zone to the playoff zone now. So you could say what you want, but they're at 4. Okay, top 2, no surprise here. 2, we have my God, I'm like become a Gladiator simp. 2, we have the Fuel. I just have them 1 tick down behind Shanghai because Shanghai's bested them a little bit. They slipped a little bit in the June Joust, but I think they worked on some things in the Countdown Cup. A lot of people were saying they weren't doing, they weren't trying, and I don't think they were trying necessarily, in quotes, but they were trying out things. They were trying to get more comfortable with ball comps, trying to get onto more things that were meta, not necessarily for the Countdown Cup, but the potential for the playoffs. They also got to play a bunch of teams that are going to be in the playoffs, or at least a couple. You can't deny that this team is a top 2 team. Anyway, I had them at the beginning of the year. I believe I had them at 2 behind the Dragons, or I had them 1 and 1A. Because you have Sparkle, you have Doha, you have Fielder, you have Jexay, and you have Fearless and Hanbin. All fantastic players. All pretty much role stars, MVP candidates, all of the things, all of the accolades, they're there. They create their own meta. They know how to play this game. And, they have Pine waiting in the wings in case. I think it's more, if we get into a long range thing, like a Widow, or you could say Ashe. I don't know what his Ashe is like. He left the league before Ashe even got released. So, on stream he looks okay, but that's, neither here nor there. But I'm expecting them to be vying for the championship along with the number 1 team, the Shanghai Dragons. Dragons, we've talked extensively about them. They have Fate, Void, Izzyaki, Lee Jae-gon, Fleta, Lip. This team is, much like Dallas, all All-Stars, Role Stars, MVP candidates. They have all the accolades for a reason. They've won a couple of tournaments this year. They've gotten through a lot of stuff, different metas. They're almost meta-proof. I would say you could argue a couple of things, but this team is the best team in the league right now. Dallas is close. I know we didn't see much from them in the Countdown Cup, but if you take recency bias out of it and you go to the macro of the whole season, the Dragons are the best team in the league. I wasn't surprised by this at all. I thought the Fate move was kind of weird, but I liked it from the aspect of the leadership that dude provides, and he's upped his game mechanically, skill-wise, and, he's proved himself to be as good almost as Fearless. But on this team, he's better than Fearless was on this team as a whole. Fearless fits Dallas better. He fits Shanghai better. It's just everything worked out. And I'm not knocking either one of the guys. I think that Fate has proved to be a big cog in this wheel that they, much like I was saying about Pelican, he was the thing that this team needed that we didn't know they needed. And it's worked out fantastically for them. And you add in how well Izziaki's playing and Lee Jae-gong, and then you have 2 guys that are pretty much MVP candidates in Lip and Fleta. Well, they both are, I guess. And Void. They're going to be very, very hard to beat. There's going to have to be a weird meta where a team, in my opinion, and this goes for Dallas too, there's going to have to be a weird meta where a team just absolutely owns it that starts flushing itself out, that they're not going to be able to control or stop or something like that. And I mean outside of them versus Dallas. If Atlanta gets something, or Chengdu, or the Gladiators, or somebody like the Shock gets into something where they're good at, that's going to be what knocks them out. I think you're going to be looking at them in Dallas a lot again, because they're the 2 best teams of the 2021 season, and the Dragons right now are my number 1 team. All right, guys, that's going to do it for my playoff rankings. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been fun. I love doing rankings. I love talking about things like this, ranking teams, giving my opinion, and I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear, what your thoughts are and all that stuff, and give me reasons too. Don't just say, X sucks or whatever. I want to hear what your opinion is. I want to know why you think that my pick of Washington that low is bad. Give me a solid reason. And we can go back and forth on it. This is what this is all about. I want to talk to you guys, get some back and forth. All right. So that is going to be it for this episode, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. All of your support's been greatly, greatly appreciated. If you're new, thanks a lot for stopping by, checking me out. If you can hit a like, hit a subscribe, do the YouTube jazz, that would be great. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you on the next one.